Everybody, July 22nd, 2025, here with your nightly watch list video. Boy, where do we start? Today, it all started with costs. I guess we can reference this one first. Had this, pretty insane move. We'll zoom this thing down. Had some pretty stupid candles here. Don't really know what these are. But, right at the open, or pre-market, this thing is absolutely squeezing. Felt a little bit like meme mania, and obviously you had open door yesterday, and then today just completely fell apart. You had this insane squeeze on gigantic 1 point some odd billion shares, 1.8 billion, 1.9 billion shares. And it's kind of what we've been getting. And then yesterday, you got this nasty dump, and you had a bit of the unwind in the more speculative stuff, right? Even quantum today kind of stayed heavy. You did have some nice bounces across the board. You had a really nice bounce in like a QS, kind of surprising. I did stay short Joby, not quite as powerful of a bounce. Make me think that, maybe these kind of can stay heavy and roll over, or at least digest, through time from here. And we'll kind of see what happens from there. But the reality was today, in particular, in after hours, felt like if you had a big short interest, it was just meme mania. It started with in after hours. I want to say Donut was one that took off in after hours, went almost all the way to $6 after closing at 4. And then you also had flowers.com, FLWS, if I'm not mistaken, 1-800-Flowers, went up to 9 when it closes at 6.5. And just pretty much down the list, if GoPro, GPRO, another one. And it's just kind of the market that we're in, one after the other, high short float, high short interest, kind of getting squeezed out. It's that doesn't mean that there's not some quality out there, but the market did a really crazy job of just shaking people out, right? You had something like A-Lab this morning. Now, while I do like the recovery and I do like the way this thing closed, right, it's like you had this nasty move down, take out yesterday's lows. I mean, that's no fun. Could this be a higher low setup? And I think that that's totally possible. But again, it just kind of goes to show you the volatility that's out there. Even my Tesla wasn't the most fun today at the open, right? Just kind of a nasty little move down, takes out yesterday's lows, almost takes out the low of the day in which I bought it. So again, not tons of fun, and then just recovers from there. We do have earnings tomorrow afternoon, so I don't want to be too stubborn. There are some things in the market that give me a little bit of pause, and that's a name like Netflix, which is one of your leaders, completely losing the 50 simple moving average today. Do we continue to follow through tomorrow lower? We are effectively back at where I initially sold this thing in June 10th to be specific, and it just kind of goes to show you that if I still held this thing using the 50, I would effectively be selling it right now at the exact same price I did, 6 weeks ago. So, really, I kind of laugh at it. You never really want to just get out of something to get out of it. But I did get shaken out on 610, and if I didn't get shaken out on 610, I either would have gotten shaken out on 718 or today. And that's just kind of the market that we're in right now. There are some things that continue to act well. Google, and gapping up a little bit overnight. Crypto markets are still acting pretty dang well. But again, with the crypto market, you're dealing with some volatility like you saw in Iron yesterday. While on the flip side, something like Cypher has a superb update today. And then, of course, gapping higher. So, it's just kind of the environment that we're in right now. Things are still fairly choppy. I'm not trying to be negative because I'm still coming across setups that I like, in particular in groups that I like. I did not execute on any of the gold stocks that we were talking about today. Unfortunately, WPM I thought was very, very nice and constructive. KGC I thought was also really nice. AEM I thought was also really nice. Those were my favorite. I do have a name, I guess at this point it is a little bit lagging, but it doesn't look bad at all, is CDE. Love the tight day. This is just an inside day, so if we can take out today's highs effectively, would be clearing this base. I would expect some volume to come in for it. But again, on something like CDE, you'd have to be watching silver. Silver's not necessarily tight here, so silver's also a little bit crowded. So again, CDE would be one of those where if you did take it, one, it's a little bit of a laggard. Two, silver space is a little bit crowded, but something to definitely keep an eye on going into tomorrow. Obviously, I just fumbled not getting positioned. I'm sitting there watching KGC and WPM right at the open, and I'm watching level 2, and I'm just not comfortable putting on my kind of size on a name like that when it's trading with a little bit wider of a spread. Just to get in the thing, I'm basically already looking at $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 into the red. That's not always the most comfortable situation to be in, when you're trying to put on, a 5 or 10% position. So again, kind of sucks, is what it is. They had really awesome days today. Should have been, even just sizing it down a little bit and still have taken the position. But, I'm not too mad about it. The important part here is that you're at least finding the stocks that are trying to go higher. I don't care if they're bank names or they're gold and silver stocks or they're crypto stocks or what have you. The important part is that you're locating them and you're doing your job every night to find the stocks that are trying to go higher and then, trying to get positioned in them. Again, I fumbled. I didn't get positioned in it, and, that's my loss. So, with that said, I will kind of start to touch upon these names that I still think are viable potentially going into tomorrow. There's not actually tons on my list today. I thought, again, the gold and silver sector was my favorite going into the day. I actually believe that, based on some of the action in an open, any kind of pops on this thing would probably end up making for a pretty good short. And if that's going to be the case, there's going to be a lot of stuff that ends up unwinding in terms of the high short interest names, whether it's something like Open, I even saw something like BYND, Beyond Meat, squeezing up some more in after hours. I won't be too surprised if, these names are getting their butts kicked here in pretty short order. So kind of leaving those in the back of my mind. These things are a little bit more illiquid, but when you get a pretty fat squeeze, they tend to be very liquid into that squeeze. So, maybe something that is playable, like a KSS. The idea would be, you get this big squeeze on something, and then there's like a stupid amount of liquidity on it, $100 million plus, and then you can get involved on something like KSS. But, there's just a lot of euphoria going on around the market right now, mostly in these overbeaten, high short interest names. Those aren't really what I want to swing. Those are just, maybe quick opportunities, wallet pad, and then, you just kind of move on from that idea. But Tesla, they have earnings tomorrow afternoon. I really need this thing to close 340 plus before earnings, before feeling any kind of comfortable, right? I'd want like a $12, $15 cushion on it before I would be comfortable to hold this thing into earnings. But if we can go ahead and get close to 340, I would not be adding tomorrow. I would just let it work. If we can close, near 340 into earnings, I would feel comfortable holding that overnight, and then really into that earnings, and then I would be hopeful for some kind of a, really a gap up, and then I can go ahead and buy like a 5-minute opening range break on the gap up. So just going to leave Tesla on radar for now. I really do like the way this NXT is shaping up. Bounced really nicely off the 50 simple moving average, has come really cleanly into the 20, is starting to surf the 20. If we can go ahead and take out $63, I would be interested in this setup. Very, very tight setup. Solar's had an awesome day today. TAN, in my opinion, I thought looked pretty dang good. Sedge, I thought looked pretty dang good. As it relates to Sedge is also one of those that's got a high short interest. So could this keep going just based on the theme of high short interest names moving? Maybe. I do want to, kind of make note that EMPH had earnings, and these were absolutely terrible. At least the reaction was absolutely terrible. You thought you had a push going, and then you closed all the way back at $39. We'll see what happens into tomorrow for something like EMPH, but we'll see if it plays any kind of effect. These high short interest names, if NXT can go ahead and get rolling. Toast, love me some Toast. Closed really well today. I did nothing with it. Didn't do anything. I still own it from 46 bucks. I would like to see, any kind of pullbacks into these moving averages. To me, still feel pretty viable. Kind of feels like Toast is trying to grind higher, and hopefully that is true. And I can go ahead and trim some off into the 50s, and then just let it work with earnings coming up in about 2 weeks, if I'm not mistaken. IBIT starting to look a little bit better. Obviously, small, tiny little gap down going on overnight. Nothing really wrong with it, in my opinion, but starting to kind of build out this little shelf here. We'll see if this thing can kind of continue and then build us this little shelf, and we can go ahead and buy some over that little level. Below 715's low, I will be trimming some more, which effectively is 65.77 is where I would be taking some off. Bloom Energy, I think, still looks pretty fantastic. Continuously finding support at the rising 20 simple moving average. I will be leaving this thing on watch. If we can go ahead and take out 26.37, I would be interested. Call it 26.40s. I would be interested in this for a possible long as well. Going down the list, AAOI, love the pullback. Thank goodness. You guys have heard me talk about this before. I do not like wedging price action. Pullbacks, flat pivots, that's kind of the idea. If we can go a little bit lower, I would be comfortable looking at this low right here, call it 23.80 as a potential undercut and rally. So come on into that 23.80 level, maybe come visit the 200 simple moving average, and we get a 200 simple moving average undercut and rally / moving average undercut and rally. I think that would look awesome. Against that $24 level, that would be like a dream come true to try to get myself positioned in a name like AOI. Love the volume that's been coming into this thing. Yes, a little bit of a pickup in volume on the way down. No, I'm not making too much of a stink about it because this thing has had really nice accumulation on the way up. CCL, did not mind the action at all. Again, you are closing above now 30 bucks in after hours. Personally, the more sideways, the better. Let the 50 catch up. Yes, we are still just a touch extended from the 50, and you guys know how I feel about buying anything extended from the 50. Ideally, a few more days, and CCL could be really, really good for ads. Alibaba, kind of love what I'm seeing here personally, right? You've had these little pivots, right, where it's like you try to take out the 109 and the 200 simple moving average, you try to take out this 117 and the 50 simple moving average, and now effectively we're building another higher pivot. If we can go, and I'm treating these all kind of as like these, higher lows, where every time this thing is coming down, it can't come down as far. If we can go ahead and take out 122 tomorrow, I think that could be pretty interesting. 122.30. I really don't want to be left behind in a BABA, and this thing is known for having just these pretty stupid rallies, massive rallies, and not really slowing up for anybody, and it's kind of what it's doing now. If we decide to break 122 and change and can get some nice follow through on the day we buy it, that would be ideal. That would make me most comfortable for holding it overnight. Shopify, did not mind the action at all today. Nice little pullback. If we can kind of just keep pressing a little bit higher and wedging up into this left side peak 129.40, when we take out that flat base, I would be a willing buyer in Shopify. Otherwise, I will be watching it against the 20 and even potentially the 50 simple moving average if we can pull back into those levels. Like I already mentioned, CDE, love the tight day within this base. We'll see if we can get going over 965, call it, for the breakout. Love the action today in Upstart. You come right down to the 20 simple moving average one time, pick up in volume as you're bouncing off of it. Come back into the 20 simple moving average, pick up in volume as you're bouncing off of it. Very, very resilient price action. Ideally, maybe an inside day tomorrow, and then on Thursday we can come in and buy an Upstart. I do not mind what an Affirm is doing either. Yes, a little bit bigger of a pullback, but could this just still be higher lows? Obviously, one is acting a whole lot better than the other, but not going to complain too much with this potential group going forward. Still kind of keeping my eyes on it. Yes, one did act a whole lot better than the other, so you kind of know which one you want to own, right? The rule of thumb is trade the tennis balls, ignore the eggs. Affirm a little bit more eggy, kind of action today. Upstart, a little bit more tennis ball action today. So very, very nice to see. We'll keep our eye on Upstart going forward and see if we can't get ourselves positioned in that name. And then on the short side, yes, I still have Joby, and I will be watching to see if I can get some ads onto this thing, for a potential move lower. And same thing with QS. I don't know what the hell was going on with this thing all day long, but effectively an all-day bid, just nonstop. I don't know what was going on. Yes, a clean bounce off the 10-day moving average, but if hardly a downtick all day long. It was very, very unusual action in this thing, and we'll keep our eye on it. I don't have it as a short right now, but if we can go ahead and reject today's highs, that $14 level tomorrow morning, just probably in the morning you get this low volume walk down, trap some more shorts, run them back up, squeeze them out over 14, and then sit back down for a fade tomorrow. But again, market dependent. If you have like quantum stocks ripping, ENVX ripping, some more battery names ripping, some more speculative stuff ripping, high short interest names ripping, right? I'm not just interested in shorting the front side on a bunch of this stuff. You got to be really careful. I was blessed with a gift on Monday where you got this big washout in the morning. I didn't play it again on the, after the bounce, but, glad I didn't really hold it. QS was a hell of a lot stronger today than Joby, but even a Joby bounced quite a bit from the lows. So not really much going on out here. Yes, there are still some setups, but I don't really feel like there's anything I have to rush myself into. I still own ARK. I thought ARK closed really well, a nice clean bounce off the 10-day moving average. Ideally, a bit more digestion. I still own CCL, ideally a bit more digestion. I think IBIT looks pretty dang good, which I still own. Ideally, we can go ahead and start to take out that 68.5 pivot. I still have Oklo. It did close over $60. Thank goodness. Boy, this past 2 days has not been fun action. I own it from 58, and I watched it go down there quite a bit. Not fun, but sometimes you just kind of got to grit your teeth and take your medicine. I did do a halfway decent job selling some into the strength, but past 2 days basically give up $10 a share. Not the most fun situation to be in. Toast I still have as a long. Tesla I still have as long. And finally DraftKings, if we can get over $45, we are right around football season. So if we can get going over 45, I would be interested in getting myself some more shares in DraftKings. Otherwise, still just going to use this 20 simple moving average kind of as my trailing stop for now. Anyway, hopefully this video finds you guys well, and I will see you all bright and early in the morning. Cheers.